Hello, I welcome you all to East African Daily. I am Jean-Paul Touraishimie. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Michela Wrong. She's the author of many books, but two of them are going to be the subject of our discussion today. Those are Do Not Disturb, which is in English, and Ascenseur Sans Frontières. Ascenseur Sans Frontières. I hope I'm saying it correctly.
That's fine.
Thank you. And without further delay, let me welcome Michela. I know today was tough, but I appreciate that you find time to join us today. And I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you, first of all, to find time to come on my program. And 2 years ago, you published a book in English, Do Not Disturb. I think it's 2 years ago. And 2 years after, another book is published in French, Assassin Sans Frontières. Kigali has accused you of a personal agenda against Paul Kagame, and the president of Rwanda, and RPF. So you tell our viewers why these two books? Why did you decide to write these books?
Well, just to be clear, they are the same book, okay? So this is the cover in English, and this came out 2 years ago. That's actually in Britain. This is the cover in America and Canada, I think. And so this is the new one. This is the French version, which has a different title, because sometimes when you translate titles, they don't really work so well in one language or another. It's the same book. It's just this one is in French and the other ones I showed you are in English. And I'm very, very pleased that it is now out in French, because as we know, Rwanda is a country where people speak many, many languages. Kenya, Rwanda mainly, firstly, and then also English and also French. And if I was only to have this book, I would only be speaking, since it's not yet translated in Kenya, Rwanda, I would only be speaking to part of Rwanda and part of the Great Lakes, because of course Congo is also neighboring Congo, which has been so affected by Rwanda, and its history is francophone. So having the French translation is very important, because it allows me to talk to a different public. And you mentioned that I was I'm a bit tired because I was just in Paris doing some promotion in French, which was very good for me, because it's been a while since I used my French as much as I have just done for the last week. And we had a meeting. We met with the African community in Paris. And I did lots of interviews and tried to speak to French journalists about the book. So it's a very controversial book, as people may know, because it's very critical about Kagame and the RPF, and particularly there have been lots and lots of books written about Rwanda, and you know, if you're a writer, you don't want to write the same book every time. And for me, the point was to write a book about not focusing on the plane. I mention it, of course, not focusing on the forests and the massacres in the forest, although of course I mentioned those, but focusing on something I thought was not very much spoken about, which was the assassination campaign that has been waged by the RPF against often members of the RPF elite, but very high-ranking members, which has had several very important victims, but also people a lot further down the chain. And so I start with the murder of Patrick Karegeya in South Africa, where he was strangled by a death squad that had been sent by Kigali. But as we know, many other people, including General Kayumba Nyamwasa, has been targeted. And if we go back, we can see that right back to the murders of Lizinde and Setseng Nshonga, that assassination has been one of the methods that the RPF has always used. So I've just said all of that in English. I don't know if you want me to say it in French. Just tell me how you would like to stage this.
I have someone on Zoom. Maybe you can put his video on, Mr. Aniseti Karege. He's going to interview, I mean, asking question in French. Maybe we can just complete this in English, and then we'll do the French part afterwards.
Okay, let's do it like that. That's fine by me.
I appreciate that. So what about the thank you for clarifying that. So the book is same content but different different
Language.
different titles.
Different languages and different titles, yes.
Thank you. And this is very important, obviously, for me. I don't know why I know that we do have I think recently we have seen President Kagame going to North Africa, is it West Africa, where they speak French. So I think this is going to be is going to help the French-speaking countries in Africa maybe to learn about.
Well, I think the French. I don't know about Francophone Africa, but I think France itself has a very unhappy relationship with Rwanda because of the support that President Juvenal Habyarimana enjoyed from François Mitterrand. And so there's often, I think there's a profound feeling of guilt in France about the support they gave Habyarimana's regime. And therefore there's a tendency to think that everything that has happened since the genocide, that Kagame is the great hero of the Great Lakes. And that's certainly not what my book says and not what my book portrays. So I think that's why it will be considered a controversial book in France. I mean, it is also a controversial book here in the UK. But I think in particular in France, there's been a decision sort of made about 10 years ago that France was ashamed of what France had done in the Great Lakes, and that it was time to repair the relationship with Kagame. And Macron, as we see, Emmanuel Macron has become really a very strong supporter of Paul Kagame for all sorts of reasons, partly guilt over the past, but also we're seeing that the French think they can benefit from Rwanda's military assistance in all sorts of different parts of Africa, including the Sahel. Now there was a new agreement is being signed with Benin in West Africa. So I think the relationship with France is a very, very important one, and it has gone through different phases. And now we're in a phase where the French like to think that Kagame, maybe they would say he is the Napoleon of Africa. And I certainly, I'm very impressed by Kagame, but I don't think that his presidency is one I admire. So I certainly challenge that vision.
Well, when I mentioned French-speaking countries in Africa, I was exactly talking about Benin and Guinea, the country that he just visited recently. And for me, it was strange because I think he's looking for French-speaking countries now in good relations with the countries that speak French. That wasn't the case before. So we are not sure whether it's due to its current relationship with the US, but we don't know. So now that we're talking about France, we Rwandans were disturbed by the fact that your book says it give every reason why people should be skeptical about the impression that you just said about Kagame, the impression that he gave to the international community. But to see Louise Mushikiwabo as the head of IOF, Organisation Internationale, I mean the French Francophonie, to be the head, when the core values of Francophonie, if you read them, I can't remember them all, but there's democracy is one of them, justice, human rights, and the same countries that gave him the leadership, they always, every year, they condemn the record. I mean, they highlight the record of Rwanda on human rights. It is definitely disturbing, especially also the UK. They had a CHOGM, Commonwealth Head of Government meeting in Kigali in the same core values. So doesn't that seem as an endorsement? Because your book really give everyone the reason not to believe anything, anything or everything Kagame says in RPF.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I've written many articles about Kagame, Rwanda's membership of the Commonwealth and how inappropriate it was that Chogum was staged in Kigali. You know, at the time they chose to stage that meeting in Kigali, we saw that the M23, which everyone has now acknowledged, especially the United Nations, is supported and armed and deployed on the orders of Kigali. The M23 was running rampage in eastern Congo, just 4 hours drive west of Kigali, and yet Chogum still took place. I mean, my own view, and I'm not inventing anything, is Rwanda should never have been invited to join the Commonwealth in the first place. There was a Commonwealth human rights group that wrote a damning report in 2009 examining Rwanda's claims to join the Commonwealth. As you know, Rwanda was never a British colony, so it's a very strange choice in the first place. But that, you know, the Commonwealth has a charter which expresses its values, and that Rwanda did not meet those criteria by any means and should therefore never have been invited. That NGO that issued that report was never listened to, and Rwanda was invited anyway. And now we see that Kagame is chairing the Commonwealth for a year. I mean, to my mind, I'm a British citizen, and the whole organization has put its whole reputation in disrepute. I mean, no one can take this organization seriously if you're going to ask Rwanda to chair it, and you're going to stage Chogum in Kigali. I think the same issues would apply to the Organization for the Francophonie, which is like, you know, I'm sure they do express similar values, and it's
yes.
If it's going to have an organization that stands up for these values, and then you invite as your head, the director, someone who has got the track record of someone like Louise Mushikabo, I really wonder why these organizations even exist. And I think what it does is it creates a huge cynicism amongst anyone who follows Africa, journalists, analysts, and ordinary Africans. They look at these organizations and they think you're just a dictator's club. And the same thing, of course, applies to the African Union, which has often, you know, for many decades been seen as exactly that, a club for dictators to get together and congratulate each other on their own success. But I mean, they don't win any respect in the community at large. So I think these choices are very poor ones, and they damage the institutions concerned.
Thank you very, very much. And then especially in Kigali regarding democracy, even when Paul Kagame picks his own opponent, he can even give him 30% of the vote. He always gets 99%. And Rwandans see that, but they can't express their views publicly because of fear of retribution. You just mentioned M23. M23 is another issue that the international community is going probably to regret in the future. I don't know when, but it's going to happen because of the record of human rights abuse, and is backed by the Rwandan government. There is no ambiguity now in the UN, the reports everywhere. So
yes, I mean, the UN has said this very clearly. The US has said it increasingly explicitly. If you look at the statements by Antony Blinken at the State Department, you know, and he's not only saying to Rwanda, you need to stop supporting the M23. He's been saying you need to get your troops out of Eastern Congo, your Rwandan troops. So the Americans are very clear on this fact. The French have even the French, have actually said we don't, that Rwanda should stop supporting the M23. So it's not like there's any secret about this anymore. But we seem to have the situation where the EU and countries like France are sending millions of dollars in aid to the victims of the M23 in Eastern Congo. And at the same time, they continue to send support to, to Rwanda. They give huge amounts of aid to Kagame and to Rwanda. And as we know, if you support a government with a massive package of aid, which you can't monitor, at the end of the day, you are also supporting their army.
Exactly.
And their military actions. So it's a completely disconnected, contradictory foreign policy on the part of France and the EU. At least the Americans are sort of being a bit more consistent. My country is also completely hypocritical on this front because we want to send people, asylum policy seekers to Rwanda. This bizarre deal has signed where the Rwandans say they will take these people. The most overpopulated African country is going to be taking extra refugees. So there's a really strange disconnect where I think people have signed up for a vision of Rwanda which has very little relationship to the reality, and they're not joining up the dots and realizing how contradictory their policies are.
Well, let's talk more about the refugees, actually, that are. The CNN wrote an article a few months ago, and the title of the article was they refer to that deal as a scheme, which it may have different meaning, but in the context, it means it was something like fishy, but or illegal, something that has something illegal in it, but. The contradiction, it's not the fact that the Rwanda is overpopulated and it's so poor. Of course, the UK will say that we're going to give them money to take care of them. But my issue is similar to the OEF and CHOGM. It is the human rights. These people that are being sent to Rwanda, they are the most vulnerable. They are fleeing, at least what we know from them, their statement, their stories. They are fleeing their home country because of human rights, fearing of human rights abuse. And now you're sending them to a country that has a very bad record of human rights. So how do they justify that?
Yeah, I think what they say here in the UK is that really what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a deterrent effect. And what that means is that they actually want to terrify the people who are coming to the UK, crossing the channel, and say to them, if you come here, we'll just send you to Rwanda, and you know what the human rights record is there. So there is, again, a contradiction where on the one hand, we have the Minister of Suella Braverman, the Minister for the Interior, saying, this is a lovely place. Look at these gorgeous houses, this beautiful housing estate. People here will be very happy in Kigali. And at the same time, they want people to be frightened because they want people not to come in the first place, the people who are living in the jungle in Calais. So again, this is a contradiction. Either it's a beautiful place to settle, or it's a deterrent effect, but it can't be both. And government officials will say, well, there's meant to be a deterrent effect. Wow. and Suella Braverman will say, oh, but it's a beautiful place to integrate. I think the reality, if we look at it, the real likelihood is that those people will simply not stay put. I would have thought firstly you will get people absconding, where they will have to be rounded up and detained here in the UK before they are deported by air to Rwanda. I think those people will make sure that they don't get on those flights. So it will turn them into illegals, which I suppose the government would say they already are. And then I think what will happen with people who are flown to Rwanda, I don't think they'll stay there very long. No. We saw a very similar scheme a couple of years ago with Israel, as you'll be well aware. And what I heard, and we saw interviews with people who were being flown to Israel, Eritreans, Ethiopians. They were being flown from Israel rather to Rwanda and Uganda. And then in Rwanda's case, they would then be put in a truck, a little van, and driven to the border with Uganda. Yes. And then could do whatever they wanted, and no doubt ended up back at the jungle, in the Sinai back in Israel. in a couple of months' time. So it's a delaying tactic, and it's meant to impress the British public. It's a performance. It's not a real policy, I'm afraid.
Speaking on the statement by the Minister Braverman, she just returned from Kigali, and I do believe it was in the Guardian article where she confessed that she didn't know that in 2018 refugees were killed by the police, the government of security forces. But then I think she went on to say that was then. Has anything changed really, in your opinion?
Well, I haven't been there since 2018. I doubt it. My experience is that Rwanda's police force and its army are not used to using crowd control techniques, which is something that I just came back from Paris. There is a demonstration almost every day, it seems, in Paris, and the police know how to deal with crowds, and they don't shoot them. They don't open fire. They may arrest them, or they disperse them. They may fire tear gas. They don't actually kill them. And I don't think that the Rwandan police or the Rwandan military has any idea how to deal with crowds, because they are never confronted with demonstrations. And this was a rare event in 2018 where a group of refugees who weren't getting enough to eat in one of the camps, Congolese, and they dared to stage a demonstration, and the police didn't know how to treat that. I don't think they'd ever been confronted with that, so they just opened fire. And I really doubt they've had any new training since then. And my understanding is that all the people who were regarded as having organized that unheard of demonstration ended up doing very long prison sentences. They're still in prison.
Still in prison. Yes,
yeah,
I know
the Congolese leaders, the community leaders involved.
Yes.
So there wasn't even any attempt to kind of repair the relationship with the Congolese refugee community. It was just a really hard hand, and this is what you tend to see with Rwanda, that there is there's the iron heel comes down when there's anything approaching civil society, a civil protest. So I would have thought the same thing might happen. Yeah,
it is the same. Nothing has changed, and we do have people in Rwanda that can tell you exactly that nothing has changed since 2018 to today. It's still the same. It might be even worse. But now let's. I want to conclude this English version of our discussion by going back to Congo. Congo, I read in this book. Of course, I do have the English version, and I do believe was on page 54 of the book where you talked about Adolf Hitler's lies. It was a quote about lies that you may repeat a lie every day and then you end up being believed. So, and I think in the book also, I don't remember the page, but you mentioned that Rwanda, the security threat, or the threat of safety or security, is no longer a priority in Congo. Personally, I don't believe it was ever a priority, but let's agree that it was a priority at some point, but now it's no longer a priority. Why now? Because this is a great book. It is a great book. It's, of course, it has a lot of details. And I'm wondering why now the international community continue, I think it's scared of Kagame to set a clear stand on how they keep giving him money. We know that without the international community money, the Rwandan government cannot really survive. So it's as simple as that. We're not going to give you money. Withdraw your troops from Congo, and that will save lives. Why are they scared of Kagame?
Well, I think Kagame is an intimidating personality.
And to the West as well?
Well, yeah, I think if you meet him, the first thing he does is he plays the card, because he's done this with journalists all the time, of like, how dare you criticize me given my country's past, given what happened in the genocide? How dare you? You left us to die. You left us to be massacred. So he's very happy always to play that card when he meets journalists or Western diplomats. And I think that kind of takes them aback. So I think there's that element. I think there's, but I think more recently, I think that's been a card he's been playing for a long time. I don't think it's working quite as well as it used to. But I think more recently, the card that he's playing is, I can be very useful to you. I am probably the most proactive, energetic, dynamic African president. If you want influence in Africa, and many countries do, you'll have to go through me. You can't afford to ignore me, because if you don't take me on board, I'm going to create a lot of problems for you. And then, we see with England, as we were saying, with Britain rather, we see the asylum. I'll take your asylum seekers. I'll solve that problem. And then with France, we see that him saying, you're no longer popular in the Sahel, but you're worried about pulling out and Wagner going into the Sahel. So let me be the person, let me be the African leader who deals with that problem. And so I think the trick of being a long-living, long-standing African dictator, because he is that, is to make yourself very, very useful. And he is playing that game every single day, and he does it very, very well.
Well, it's going to be a liability for them. I think that's my prediction, because at some point he's going to go, and the history is not going to look good for them, because they don't need to do anything. We're not asking them to be equal. They just need to say, we're not going to give you your money, our money, just our money, not your money, because they do not owe him anything. So, but they don't do that.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Jean-Paul, but look at the way people thought that they could do deals with Putin. And what's happened there. I remember the way people used to say, oh, Putin, yeah, well, he's not very nice man, maybe, not cuddly, but, he's a man who understands realpolitik, and we can reach an agreement with him. And how wrong they were, these Western heads of state who thought they could do deals with Putin. Well, they were very, very mistaken. So I'm afraid often these things do come back to bite you. But at the moment, that's the game that the West is playing with Paul Kagame.
And the people, Rwandan, think that maybe the speeches about human rights and democracy, justice, and it's on the papers it looks good. It looked good, but in action, people think they don't care. The international community, they just don't care.
Well, yeah, that's not a new accusation. I mean, that's an accusation that people have been making towards us for a very long time. And I think there's always been a balance between values that the West tries to encourage, not just in Africa, around the world, especially the Americans, and realpolitik. They do. To the credit of the American government, for example, they do spend a lot of money supporting elections, and civil society often benefits from funding from the West. So it's not like it's completely cynical, but there is certainly a very, very, very strong strand of self-interest there by America, by France, by Britain, and by other countries. But as they say, people don't, countries don't have relationships, they have interests.
That's very, very, very true. And that is the relationship between Kagame and the international community justify exactly that. And because of I have somebody on Zoom, Niseti Karege, for our viewers in French, because the book that we are mostly talking about is in French, is Assassin Sans Frontières. The Do Not Disturb, that we thank you. Do Not Disturb is really a good book, but it's considered 2 years old, but it's still a good book for those who, even I, who is who has a background from Rwanda and RPF to an extent. I did learn a lot of some that I did not know, because I did not have probably the means to investigate as much as you did. But there are a lot of things in this book that are going to be helpful to even those who are members of RPF.
That's great.
C'est vraiment embarrassant parce que j'ai fait mes études secondaires en francophonie au Congo, mais je ne peux pas poser, je peux, mais je
C'est
ne.
Monsieur Anicette qui va poser.
Anisette va take over. He's going to
Prendre la
ask you
parole.
questions in French for our viewers in French. So to try to split
Alors,
this discussion in two.
je vous remercie.
Merci.
Michela Wrong, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Vous venez de publier le livre Assassins sans frontières, un véritable réquisitoire contre le pouvoir du FPR à Kigali. Et les réactions n'ont pas tardé parce que les soutiens de ce pouvoir vous accusent d'être du côté des opposants au gouvernement de Kigali. Alors, une question très simple et directe. Vous considérez-vous comme étant opposante au pouvoir du FPR à Kigali? Est-ce que vous avez des preuves de ce que vous écrivez pour que ceux qui nous entendent comprennent que vous n'avez pas fait un travail subjectif, mais que vous avez mené un vrai travail de recherche qui vous permette d'avancer avec sérieux ce que vous avez écrit dans ce livre?
Merci pour la question. Moi, il faut dire que je suis opposant à la dictature. Je pense que je peux dire ça. Je prends pas un parti politique. J'appartiens pas à une parti politique rwandaise, mais comme journaliste, comme beaucoup de journalistes d'ailleurs, je suis opposant à la dictature et c'est ma position. Et ce que je veux dire aussi, quand les gens disent que je suis contre le FPR, il faut dire que je suis très critique à l'égard du FPR de nos jours, mais je pense qu'il faut reconnaître que le FPR de nos jours, c'est peut-être pas le FPR des années 90, des années 94, de 2000, que c'est un mouvement qui a changé. Et que c'est un mouvement qui a beaucoup de membres qui sont peut-être pas tellement contents de la direction qu'elle prend, une direction qui, cette direction, je veux dire, c'est il y a un monsieur qui sort de plus en plus, qui représente tout seul le FPR et c'est le président Paul Kagame. Mais moi, les premières années, quand moi j'ai connu le FPR, il y avait beaucoup de personnalités, il y avait plusieurs collègues, ils avaient tous des opinions différentes, ils discutaient entre eux et c'était pas une personne qui exprimait la politique d'un mouvement national. Alors, c'est pour préciser cette chose. Alors, vous me dites, est-ce que j'ai des preuves? Bon, il y a tellement de preuves. Mon livre se concentre sur la campagne d'assassinat qui est en train d'être menée contre les dissidents, les opposants, les gens qui osent critiquer Kagame. Il y en a eu beaucoup de Hutus et il y a aussi beaucoup de Tutsis. Et ce que moi j'ai vu personnellement, c'est que dès qu'on ose exprimer des critiques ou on passe en prison ou on disparaît au Rwanda, on meurt dans des circonstances bizarres, où on devient complètement silencieux parce qu'on est harcelé et intimidé, où on s'enfuit, et quand même quand on s'enfuit, on fait la chasse aux hommes. Et c'est le régime qui fait ça en utilisant les ambassades à l'étranger, les ambassades rwandaises aux États-Unis, en France, chez moi ici, au Royaume-Uni, en Sud-Afrique. On fait la chasse aux hommes et avec les personnes plus importantes, ils sont assassinés. Alors, il n'y a pas que moi qui dis ça, il y a les groupes des droits de l'homme comme Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, il y a les faits qui soutiennent ma thèse, c'est-à-dire qu'on voit qu'il y a des personnes qui meurent dans des circonstances un peu bizarres. Effectivement, il y a eu l'assassinat de Patrick Karegeya, il y a eu l'assassinat de Sesen Lashonga, il y a eu l'assassinat de Ernest Lizine, il y a eu l'assassinat de Revocat Karimanjengo en Mozambique, il y a eu l'assassinat de M. Bamporiki en Sud-Afrique, et il y a eu plein de monde aussi qui, à un certain moment, qui habitaient des Rwandais qui habitaient à l'extérieur. On a frappé à la porte et c'est la police anglaise ou la police américaine ou canadienne ou belge ou français qui dit écoutez, on sait que votre vie est en danger, on sait bien que votre gouvernement essaye de vous faire tuer. Et alors ça, c'est des preuves. Et aussi, moi, j'ai passé beaucoup de temps en Afrique du Sud parce qu'il y avait l'enquête dans l'assassinat de Patrick Karegeya, l'ancien chef des renseignements à l'extérieur. Et c'était vraiment très intéressant parce que ce qu'on a vu pendant cette enquête, c'est que la police sud-africaine avait averti au Parlement sud-africain, au gouvernement, ils avaient dit, écoute, on ne peut pas arrêter ces hommes-là parce qu'on sait bien qu'il y a des liens entre les messieurs qui ont commis le crime et le gouvernement du Rwanda. Alors, ils l'ont dit publiquement. L'autre chose, c'est à la fin de cette enquête, qui n'est pas un procès, c'est juste une enquête préliminaire, on a émis 2 mandats d'arrêt, 2 arrest warrants pour Monsieur Apollo, l'homme d'affaires qui a monté le piège, et aussi Alex Tugira. Et on sait que ces 2 hommes se sont enfuis après l'assassinat et ils se trouvent maintenant au Rwanda. Ils sont protégés par le gouvernement rwandais qui a absolument aucune intention d'envoyer ces messieurs à être jugés en Sud-Afrique. Alors ça, c'est une autre preuve assez importante. Alors, moi, je pense que les preuves ne manquent pas. Si on cherche un peu, il y a plein de petits événements. Il suffit de lire les journaux internationaux et suivre le dossier. Ça se passe, il y a eu des menaces, des problèmes en Australie pour les Rwandais qui habitent là-bas. Il y a eu des problèmes pour les Rwandais qui habitent en Suède. C'est une campagne internationale et c'est vraiment ça le thème sur lequel je me concentre dans mon livre. OK, c'est pour vous donner un peu l'image de ce qu'il y a dans le livre.
Je vous remercie, Madame Wrong. Vous insistez sur le caractère autocratique du pouvoir de Kigali, parce qu'il n'y a que le président Paul Kagame qui décide, comme vous le dites si bien. Mais on se demande pourquoi ce pouvoir-là, le pouvoir rwandais, continue de jouir du soutien des puissances internationales, des puissances occidentales, notamment la France, les États-Unis et la Grande-Bretagne. Et nous avons vu, par exemple, que la Grande-Bretagne prévoit d'envoyer des immigrés au Rwanda parce qu'apparemment, il y a le respect des droits de l'homme dans ce pays-là. Alors que Madame Braverman, la ministre de l'Intérieur, reconnaît elle-même. Elle ne savait pas qu'en 2018, la police rwandaise avait tiré sur les réfugiés congolais à Kiziba, dans l'ouest du Rwanda, à Kivuye. Mais le projet continue quand même. Comment expliquez-vous que les grandes puissances, notamment la Grande-Bretagne, qui est votre pays, continuent de soutenir ce régime qui bafoue les droits de l'homme et qui n'hésite pas à commettre des crimes de masse?
Oui, merci. Alors, j'ai donné la réponse en anglais à tout à l'heure, mais je vais le dire maintenant en français. Je pense qu'au début, c'est une question de culpabilité. internationale, on se rendait compte qu'au moment que les massacres ont commencé au Rwanda, la communauté internationale a pas joué un rôle, ils n'ont rien fait pour arrêter la violence et je pense ils sont bien conscients de ça et Kagame, chaque fois qu'il se fait critiquer, il dit mais où étiez-vous quand les massacres, quand le génocide a commencé? Et c'est un peu bizarre peut-être, mais ça marche très bien comme tactique. Mais il faut dire maintenant, je pense que cette tactique est de moins en moins efficace parce qu'il y a eu quand même 29 ans qui se sont passés maintenant, qui se sont déroulés. Et maintenant, je pense que c'est plutôt des raisons d'intérêt. Alors, c'est des intérêts assez cyniques. Ici, comme vous avez dit, il y a bravement notre ministre de l'Intérieur qui veut absolument, elle est obsédée par la migration comme problème et on veut rassurer le public anglais qu'on va envoyer les demandeurs d'asile au Rwanda, qui est un choix bizarre vu que c'est un pays tellement surpeuplé et comme a dit Jean-Paul il y a un moment, un des plus pauvres pays en Afrique. Mais c'est pas la question parce qu'on veut avoir un effet dissuasif et on veut vraiment terroriser ces demandeurs d'asile et comme ça, s'ils voient que peut-être ils vont être envoyés au Rwanda ou s'il suffit d'aller sur Google, ils vont voir que c'est un pays où les réfugiés congolais se sont fait tirer dessus il y a 5 ans. Il y a eu beaucoup de morts dans cet incident. Alors, ça va avoir un effet dissuasif. Le problème, c'est que ça ne marche pas. On a vu effectivement que le nombre et les chiffres pour les gens qui arrivent ici en Angleterre, ils ne diminuent pas depuis qu'on a annoncé cette politique. Mais il faut dire que oui, l'Angleterre, les Royaumes-Unis, ils ont cette intention assez cynique et ses intérêts cyniques. Et la France a aussi ses propres intérêts. Et actuellement, ce qu'on voit, c'est que les Français, on veut pas les militaires français au Sahel où la France a toujours joué un rôle très important pendant des décennies et ils sont renvoyés au Mali, au Burkina et ils risquent de perdre leur soutien là-bas, leur lien. Et alors, je pense que c'est à ce moment-là que Macron il a dû avoir une discussion avec Kagame. Et pour lui, ça serait beaucoup mieux que le Rwanda envoie des militaires là-bas, comme le Rwanda a envoyé des militaires au Centrafrique, comme le Rwanda a envoyé des militaires au Mozambique autour pour protéger l'installation de Total. Et alors Macron, il aime bien l'idée que le Rwanda peut agir à la place de la France. Alors c'est un autre intérêt très cynique. Et la chose qui est vraiment dommage, c'est dans toute cette discussion, les intérêts des Rwandais eux-mêmes et des Congolais, apparemment, ça compte pour très, très peu parce qu'on accepte que Kagame continue à soutenir le mouvement 23 et faire des dégâts partout dans l'Est parce qu'on veut qu'il a su comment se rendre utile à la France et se rendre utile au Royaume-Uni et c'est ça qui compte.
Vous pensez justement que ces intérêts de la France justement justifient le fait que Madame Louise Mushikiwabo soit à la tête de l'Organisation internationale de la francophonie, alors même que le Rwanda maintenant, qui dit que le français est bien sûr officiellement la langue officielle, mais ça faisait longtemps. Même actuellement, la langue administrative au Rwanda, c'est le Kinyarwanda, c'est l'anglais. Le français n'apparaît pas. Est-ce que vous pensez justement que le fait que malgré ça, que Louise Mushikiwabo soit à la tête de la francophonie, joue dans ce jeu d'influence?
Oui, oui, c'est bien sûr, c'est très bizarre qu'elle a été choisie pour être directeur de cette organisation, vu que une des premières actions du FPR quand ils sont arrivés au pouvoir en 94 était de remplacer le français dans les écoles rwandaises avec l'anglais. Et il y avait vraiment une hostilité à la rencontre de la langue française et aussi de la culture française. Et alors, c'est vraiment, ça a été un choix bizarre, mais je veux dire que depuis 2010, avec Sarkozy, Nicolas Sarkozy, l'ancien président, on voit qu'il y a vraiment une campagne pour que la France se rapproche du Rwanda et que cette hostilité cesse. Et d'un certain point de vue, c'est bien s'il n'y a plus cette hostilité, mais si ça veut dire que Kagame a maintenant trouvé un nouveau pays qui le protège et qui le soutient pendant qu'il est en train de faire créer beaucoup de problèmes au Grand Lac, c'est vraiment une mauvaise chose.
Vous avez certainement suivi justement l'évolution des relations entre la France et le Rwanda. Vous savez qu'il y a eu une enquête de Jean-Louis Bruguière, qui était le juge d'instruction, qui a instruit, qui a émis des mandats d'arrêt déjà contre certaines personnalités, surtout militaires, du régime rwandais. Et maintenant c'est tombé à l'eau. C'est plus d'actualité parce que justement, avec l'évolution du temps, vous parliez de Nicolas Sarkozy, vous parliez d'Emmanuel Macron, mais je voudrais vous entendre justement sur ce qu'avait fait Jean-Louis Bruguière, cette enquête sur l'attentat contre l'avion du président Habyarimana. Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez, Madame Wrong?
Bon, moi, à l'époque, ça m'a choqué parce que je ne savais pas grand-chose sur le Rwanda. J'avais suivi les études des historiens comme Gérard Prunier et c'est un monsieur qui connaissait beaucoup mieux que moi le Rwanda. Il me disait pas à moi, il disait à ses lecteurs, on pense que c'est les milices, les extrémistes Hutus qui ont fait ont fait descendre l'avion et ont fait tuer les deux présidents africains là-dedans. Et alors moi, j'ai accepté parce que c'est un monsieur qui connaissait mieux le Rwanda que moi. Alors j'étais un peu choquée quand Bruguière a annoncé en 2006 cette enquête. Mais ce qu'on a vu, il y a eu plusieurs témoins importants qui ont écrit des livres et après qui ont commencé à déclarer, et c'est des témoins qui étaient des hauts fonctionnaires, des hauts militaires dans le FPR. Patrick Carragher a été parmi eux. On sait que le général Kayumba aussi, il a déposé un témoignage avec la justice française. On sait qu'il y a des personnes comme Jean-Marie Micombero qui habite actuellement à Bruxelles. C'est la même chose avec Eugène Rudasingwa. Tous ces hommes disent la même chose, c'est-à-dire ils disent c'était nous. C'est une décision que Kagame avait prise avec quelques intimes, mais c'était nous qui, comme mouvement, on a descendu l'avion et il faut l'admettre. Et je pense que s'il y a des personnes qui étaient dans une position de savoir, qui déclarent ça, il faut le prendre au sérieux. Et je trouve vraiment, vraiment bizarre que les Français, la justice française, ils ont quand même décidé de déclarer un non-lieu et de fermer, il n'y a plus d'enquête qui se fait. Il faut dire que ça donne vraiment l'impression que c'est un processus complètement politique. On a décidé qu'on veut avoir des liens très importants maintenant avec Kagame, que c'est l'homme qu'il nous faut. Et alors, on ne veut absolument pas continuer avec cette enquête. Et ça laisse une mauvaise impression, je dois dire, parce qu'on vraiment, on a l'impression que c'est une justice qui est tordue et qui est manipulée d'une façon politique.
Je vous remercie, Madame Wrong. Avant de terminer, vous avez suivi la tournée ouest-africaine de Paul Kagame. C'était la semaine dernière. Il a été accueilli en héros. La Guinée-Conakry, par exemple, dit vouloir s'inspirer du modèle rwandais pour développer le pays. Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez, Madame Long? Est-ce que ces gens-là, l'Afrique de l'Ouest, est mal informée ou tout simplement il y a une sorte d'intoxication, il y a peut-être que ces autorités des pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest sont victimes de la
Il faut dire,
communication.
oui, non, c'est une bonne question. On entend un peu la même chose. On a déjà entendu ça au Ghana aussi, avec les dirigeants du Ghana. Et aussi, on a entendu ça en Afrique du Sud. Les dirigeants qui disent, ah, mais lui, il faut être comme Kagame, il faut suivre son exemple. Mais ça ne m'étonne pas parce qu'après tout, ils voient qu'il y a un tout petit pays très pauvre qui est en train d'intervenir au niveau militaire d'une façon vraiment importante et cynique dans un pays voisin qui est beaucoup plus riche, qu'on crée beaucoup de dégâts, on est en train de créer des milliers de réfugiés. Et il voit que malgré tout cela, Kagame, on ne peut pas dire que c'est un démocrate, on ne peut pas dire que ces élections sont transparentes et fiables. Les résultats c'est évident qu'ils sont, que ce n'est pas des élections on peut pas, si on voit un homme qui reçoit 99,9% des voix, c'est évident qu'il a truqué les élections. On voit tout ça et on voit que quand même, malgré tout cela, malgré la mort des journalistes, malgré le fait que le chef de l'opposition, elle a passé 8 ans en prison et maintenant elle ne peut pas sortir de chez elle, on voit que quand même, ils reçoivent beaucoup de soutien financier étranger. Bon, c'est évident qu'au Bénin, au Conakry, en Sud-Afrique et au Ghana, on va dire on veut la même chose. Bon, c'est un très bon exemple, on va le suivre. Mais il faut dire que je pense qu'il y a une combinaison de facteurs qui veulent dire que le Rwanda a pu jouer ce rôle. C'est surtout au début, c'était grâce à cette culpabilité mondiale, globale au sujet du génocide. Et je ne pense pas que ça va marcher pour les autres dirigeants. Et surtout, ça ne va pas marcher parce que chez eux, on est moins convaincus. Je veux dire, les gens qui votent au Bénin, et les gens au Ghana, ou les citoyens normaux, ordinaires en Afrique du Sud, je pense pas, qu'ils sont beaucoup moins impressionnés que leurs dirigeants qui veulent eux aussi jouer le rôle de strongman de l'Afrique.
Je vous remercie encore une fois. Une dernière question. Vous avez vu, le constater, la société rwandaise est divisée. Il y a des gens qui soutiennent ce que vous avez écrit. Il y en a d'autres qui vous vilipendent et qui pensent que vous êtes justement aux côtés de l'opposition. Je voudrais vous demander, avant de clore cet entretien, d'adresser un message à la société rwandaise en général.
Bon, comme journaliste, on est toujours critique. Hein? Moi, avant d'écrire ce livre, j'avais publié 4 autres livres. Et il y avait un que j'avais écrit sur le Congo, sur la chute de Mobutu. J'avais écrit un livre sur la corruption au Kenya. Avec Mwai Kibaki, le président, l'ancien président qui est récemment il est mort. Et j'avais aussi écrit un livre sur l'Érythrée. Et dans tous les cas, et avec le Rwanda aussi, on se fait beaucoup d'ennemis parce qu'on dit des choses ouvertement, publiquement, que beaucoup de gens ne veulent pas entendre. Et c'est pas seulement le fait que le régime ne veut pas les entendre, c'est aussi quelquefois que quelqu'un, un citoyen, il se dit, OK, oui, je sais que ma société, je sais que mon pays, ils ont des problèmes, mais c'est pas une journaliste blanche qui va me dire ça. C'est à moi de le dire. Et j'accepte que beaucoup de gens, ça les énerve. Et je comprends ça parce que moi, je suis pareil quand j'entends peut-être des Américaines critiquer mon gouvernement ici en Angleterre. Mais à un certain moment, je pense que quand même, on se rend compte que moi, j'ai pas inventé les Américains qui critiquent le Royaume-Uni, mon gouvernement, Boris Johnson et tous les autres. Ils ont un peu raison. Et ils savent de quoi ils parlent. Ils passent beaucoup de temps ici, ils habitent ici et ils basent leurs analyses sur les faits. Alors moi, il faut dire, j'habite pas au Rwanda, mais j'ai fait beaucoup de recherches. J'habite pas là-bas parce que je pense pas qu'on me donnerait un visa et que je serais sain et sauf. Mais quand même, les gens comme moi, on peut jouer un rôle utile. C'est-à-dire, quelquefois, on peut dire les choses que les journalistes ou les gens du coin, ils peuvent pas parce que c'est vraiment une dictature et on ne peut pas s'exprimer ouvertement. Et j'espère que comme ça, je peux être un peu utile avec ce que j'écris.
Michela Wrong, je vous remercie.
Merci pour les questions.
Merci à vous.
Jean-Paul, on vous écoute pas.
Jean-Paul.
I was on mute. I'm so sorry. Thank you for my colleague and friend, Niseti Karege, to have helped in French for our French viewers. It would be very unfair on my part, Michela, to keep you longer than this, knowing because I'm aware of your weekend schedule. But I have a few questions from the audience, just a few. They're not going to take, I promise it won't be too much. And I promise I will pick a few. I actually already picked them, but I want to apologize to our viewers. We have a live chat and I cannot read every message, but I've picked a few that I think deserve your attention, that needs your attention. So the first one was what influence do you want your book to have on viewers or audience or the readers? Vous pouvez répondre en français si vous préférez.
Okay.
Parce que vous avez le book est en français.
OK. Bon, je suis contente parce que maintenant, les gens, les francophones peuvent le lire. Et je sais qu'en France, au moins, il y a certaines opinions sur l'FPR, le Rwanda, que, à mon avis, n'est pas vraiment basé sur les faits. Alors, j'espère que les gens vont se poser des questions et reconsidérer un peu leurs suppositions à la rencontre du Rwanda. Parce que en Occident, on a du pouvoir parce qu'on soutient ce type de dictature. On le soutient avec l'argent. Et à la fin, c'est les citoyens à l'Occident, avec leurs taxes, ils soutiennent ces pays, même s'ils ne choisissent pas. Alors, il faut qu'ils savent ce que le gouvernement, leur gouvernement sont en train de faire dans leur nom. Et c'est ça, je veux qu'il y ait plus d'informations et on est mieux informé. C'est ça mon but.
Merci, ça c'était une question from Colette Wanyuzi. Another question is from would you consider having your book on Netflix documentary? I picked this one because I thought it would be a great idea.
I would love to. Do I say it in French or in English?
She asked in English,
okay,
but you can say in both.
I would love to. I'd love a documentary to be made, a drama to be made. I've often pointed out to my friends that what you see happening in the world I'm describing is this murky world of spies and assassination plots and death squads and friends who become enemies and try and kill one another, people who knew each other very, very well and who then end up plotting to destroy one another. For me, this is an incredible drama. I mean, it's true, but it is also an amazing Shakespearean drama. So I would love it if Netflix were to make a feature film or a documentary. But I don't have the power to make that happen. I just have to hope that one day a Netflix director will pick up my book and have the same thought that I have.
Don't you think if you send it to them, maybe they will have interest in?
Oh, Jean-Paul, you don't know how it works. That's what I have a literary agent for, and that's what you have a publisher for, and they do that all the time. And the trouble is, everyone does that with their books, and you know, some of them, most of them get ignored, and then just occasionally one gets made into a wonderful film. But,
and obviously, one of the obvious questions is, how do we get your book? I know the answer, but I'll let you respond.
Okay. Well, Max Milo is the editor, the French one. Yeah. It's a company called Max Milo Publishing House. You can get it on the website. You just do www.maxmilo. And you can order it and buy it using a credit card. Also, you can buy it on Amazon, whether it's the British Amazon, amazon.co.uk, or Amazon FR, that's the French Amazon, or Amazon, I think even in America, you can buy the French version. There is an ebook. So I know for people in Africa, often it's very difficult to get things delivered by post. It never arrives, or it takes months. There is an ebook for those people. The trouble is, I think there are only some countries where the book works. And I'm afraid that's probably because of pirating, because so many books get pirated and some, you know, in some of the countries in Africa. And so there aren't ebook availability there. So I think try and get it, an ebook, or try and order it. And what I find with my books is, I think a lot of people, you know, Africans travel all the time, and you can usually get my books in airport bookshops. They sell well in South Africa, Cape Town, you know, Johannesburg, Dar es Salaam, Nairobi. Not so much with this one with Kampala, because the bookshop owners are wary of my book now on this one. So I think, you know, people who run bookshops, they know that when people want to buy books, and they will. So just when you go to an airport, go into the bookshop and see if they have it.
If you may say that in French, just briefly, comment obtenir votre book?
Ok. Bon, en principe, on peut acheter ça. Il y a le site web Max Milo. On peut l'acheter avec une carte de crédit. Sinon, c'est sur Amazon. Et si on a des problèmes pour avoir des exemplaires physiques concrets, il y a un e-book, mais il faut dire que c'est pas disponible dans tous les pays d'Afrique. Il y a quelques-uns où il y a des problèmes de piratage, alors c'est difficile d'acheter le e-book. Alors peut-être, je pense à Kinshasa, c'est un peu difficile d'acheter le e-book. Il faut que je dise une chose importante, c'est que en mai, c'est-à-dire bientôt, j'ai été invitée au festival Buku à Kinshasa, qui va avoir lieu entre le 5 et le 7 mai. Et il y aura des autres événements à Kinshasa autour des livres. Alors, je suis vraiment très contente parce qu'on va présenter des exemplaires. On peut l'acheter là-bas. Je vais être là-bas. Je vais parler de mon livre avec les gens qui passent. Et aussi, on va présenter le livre à Bruxelles le mai 19. Il va avoir des exemplaires en vente à Bruxelles. Alors, si les gens s'intéressent, il faut qu'ils se présentent là-bas à Bruxelles parce que je pense que je vais avoir plusieurs événements et des possibilités de rencontrer les lecteurs à Bruxelles en 19 mai.
Merci beaucoup, Michela. This one is from me after the release of Paul Rusesabagina. Do you think the West international community have learned something, or are they going to see the release of Rusesabagina as, you know what, he did what we asked, so we'll give him a pass?
I think despite at the time that he was freed, everyone talked about the role Qatar had played. My understanding is it really was American pressure that got him released. It was America, it was the congressman who kept bringing up the case. It was the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that visited him, sent staffers to visit him in prison. Eventually the White House got involved and the State Department got involved. So I think there was intense American pressure. And for me, the important thing about that case is I think people often feel that you cannot stand up to Kagame, that he is a very intimidating figure and he knows what he wants and he never changes his mind. And I must admit, I was very skeptical. I didn't believe that Rusesabagina would be freed. I was wrong. I'm very pleased for his family and for him that I was proved completely wrong. I think many people shared my view and we were all proved wrong. And I think what it shows is if you stand up to a bully, often it's you who win and the bully gives way. So I think it's actually an example that people should be following.
And I want to, again, apologize for our viewers. We have a live audience of about 400 around, and then 2,000 in live audience. I cannot read every single message, and everybody say thank you for your time, and also made some comments that are obvious. If we had enough time, I would love to read them to you, but I don't think we can have that much time. And unless you promise to come back sometimes. And
well, yeah, I mean, I'd be very happy to do this again. And, you know, by then the book will have been on the market and I'd, you know, happy to discuss with people who managed to read it and their comments that would be really interesting. I'd like to hear them.
There are two of them who already promised. They said it's a must-buy book. They're going to order it, so I hope it is available. And also to say, to add to what you said about how to get it. If you search Google your name, you'll see those two books. They appear in your name search. So it's not difficult to see.
It's not hard. You know, my publisher is trying to promote it at the moment, so it's not hard to find.
It's not. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much, Michela. So I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much to Annie said earlier.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Okay. Bonsoir.
Do you want me to? I will send you the link.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Please do send me the link. Salut, Anisette. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Merci.
Merci.
You send me the link. Yes.
Bon weekend.
Bon weekend.
So that concludes our program. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who took part in this. Anisette, merci beaucoup. Tout le monde in live chat, thank you so much.
Merci, Jean-Paul.